there's somebody now around, in other words, the newly elected leader of the Greens, who is consciously modelling himself as the antithesis of Nigel, isn't he? This extraordinary figure called, well, at the moment he's called Zack Polanski. I gather he was born rather more boringly David Paulden, but he's reinvented himself. How do you see him performing as the leader of the Greens? How do you? I mean, do you see anything in his notion that he is a kind of mirror image of Nigel, but the good mirror image, with Nigel being the bad boy?
He is utterly convinced of his own rectitude. Utterly convinced. I found myself in the very awkward position a few months ago on a TV panel with the Chief Secretary of the Treasury, Emma Reynolds, and Zack Polanski. And I found myself a Reform spokesman defending the Labour economics spokesman from the sheer lunacy of Polanski's economics. He just screams billionaires and millionaires at people and demands that everybody pay 80% tax because he's a good guy. And it's a little bit like that famous sketch of Are We the Baddies? One begins to feel that they certainly are. He is a very performative politician.
Well, can we look at his background? He is a former Harley Street quack. This is the important thing to understand. He's a former hypnotist. He used to hypnotize women and persuade them, if they thought about it a lot, their tits would grow bigger.
This is true.
Is this not essentially his approach to the economy? He wants to hypnotize us all and persuade us that the magic of there's a magic money tree, that the vast bulk of the wealth in the country is held by a handful of secretive billionaires. If only their wealth were generally circulated, we would all live happily ever after and not have to do a day's work. It's just another form. It's another form of magic, isn't it?
It is, but worse than that, not only would we live happily ever after, we wouldn't be able to move from A to B because it'd have banned cars, and the electricity, there would be no power. I suppose we could go back to horses and make our own energy.
There'll be no children because we'd all be transgendered, probably compulsorily.
I think compulsory transgenderism is not actually one of his policies as of yet.
No. But there is policy development, as there is with reform. I'm sure there is the equivalent of a green board working on this even as we're now. But I am mocking, but it's true, isn't it?
You only have to see his performances in the London Assembly, and they are short, bullet point rants. And this, I think, he thinks he has learned from Farage, but he doesn't do it in the same way. One, there's almost never, ever any humour. There's no scintilla of self-deprecation because he is so certain of his own moral purity. And it is the as you were saying about Angela Rayner and the Labour Party, is this idea, because we know we are morally good, everything we do is morally good, even when we do things that are bad. They must be good because we're good. And that's sense of entitled hypocrisy absolutely runs through everything Zack Polanski says. He made some claim about me, and he used it in his campaign. Said, I proved that reform are just funded by billionaires and millionaires. And I pointed out, well, actually, most of our money comes from the £25 membership from our 230,000 members. But that's not registered on an LCOM, so it doesn't exist in his head because he only sees things in such simplistic ways. It's good, but I think for his base in the Green Party, that suits their mindset. It will not do him any harm electorally.
What do you think? Again, I know you're very interested in this kind of electoral nitty-gritty. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, do you think that we'll now see an alliance, because they make exactly the same noises, between they all believe in the magic monetary? Do you think the Fruit and Nut Party, Sultana and Corbyn, is going to go effectively into an electoral pact with the Greens?
I don't think they will, at least initially. I think they'll wait for the first round of elections before they do that. But there are times between now and then, such as the Welsh and Scottish elections next year, the council elections next year, for them to have an idea of where they stand against each other. So I don't think it's going to be quick. It's not going to be like the SDP and the Lib Dems, and the Liberals, who literally within a couple of months of the foundation of the SDP, had done a deal. I don't think it's going to be the case. Jezbollah has different views and it has a much bigger clout. I think one thing, I do believe that Polanski's Greens will save their seats in Brighton, in Bristol, in a couple of other cities and urban places. But I suspect the seats they have won in Herefordshire and in Norfolk, I suspect their hardcore economic attitudes will turn off a lot of the slightly uh,
Blue-green.
barber-wearing middle-class mobbies. Yeah, I don't think they're going to be quite so happy. I think the Herefordshire and Norfolk seats that the Greens hold now may well be put into question by his approach.
That's very interesting. So I think we'll see, I'm sure you're right. We'll see again. What's going on at the moment is this extraordinary redrawing of the electoral map, isn't it? As the actual electoral coalitions, in other words, the kinds of electors supporting the various political parties, undergo this extraordinary kaleidoscopic shift, which we've seen since Boris Johnson in the 2019 election. But just looking at the bigger picture, how much do you think the Green stroke fruit and nut party or our party, your party, whatever it is, combination is going to do damage to the Labour vote? I mean, I would suspect a very great deal, don't you?
I do think it's going to be extremely damaging. Though I take one issue with I think what's now become commonplace thinking, and that is that we have fragmentation of politics. Complete. It's no longer a two-party state. It's da 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 da. I suspect we're not seeing fragmentation so much as a realignment. So on the right, reform looks like it's going to take the Tories out of Scotland and Wales. The Conservatives therefore cease to be a national party and they cease to have a purpose, really. On the left, I think if they do, the Greens and the left wing of the Labour Party and Jezbollah, fruit and nuts come together, then you can see a replacement of Labour. One of the things in this study that came out yesterday I thought was fascinating is they looked at the 12 to 16-year-olds and the ones who Labour are sort of gerrymandering in to vote at the next election. Because Labour thinks that there's having dominated schools, they will collect a lot of votes in that segment. But right now, in that group of the 16, 17-year-olds right now, I think it's 23% Labour, 22% Reform, 21% Corbyn. That doesn't include the Greens. The Greens are another 10%. So there is something going on there. But the 20 seats most with the largest 12 to 16-year-olds, the ones who will be voting next time, are almost all with large Islamic minorities.
And we better call them Muslim, haven't we? We better call them Muslim rather than Islamic. Yeah.
Yes, okay, indeed, Muslim, but that community has more children than the settled community. It just does. So, of course, the relative impact of youth vote that Labour brought in thinking they would vote for them, they may have created an absolute monster with this sort of constitutional gerrymandering. And I think it's extremely worrying.